Hey everyone, today I'm going to be showing you how to make the game Flappy Bird in Unity. This will also be a tutorial for absolute beginners, so I'm going to guide you from the very start, installing Unity, to all the way to making a full Flappy Bird game. So the first step is to simply download the Unity Hub. Simply in your browser, search up Unity Hub, and then you should find this, and then you can click Get Started with Unity Hub, and then download it, and then click whether you're on Windows, Mac, Mac 64, or Linux. In my case, I am on this, and I am going to download it. Anyways, if you are on if you're on a Mac, then you can open this up, and same thing if you're on Windows, basically. Anyways, you have to just wait for it to install, and meanwhile you're waiting, you might as well just go to the link in the description, at which point you'll find this folder called Flappy Bird. This is going to be all the sprites that we're going to have, as well as font and audio. Since I downloaded the wrong version. Anyways, yeah, it has everything that you need inside of it, and so we're gonna have to drag these folders inside of Unity. So as I said, we have to simply download it and just open it up, agree to all the terms and conditions, otherwise this won't work. And then it should. In my case, I have already installed it, so I don't really care about this. Once you've installed it, you can move it to trash. Anyways, next you can open up your Unity app. In case you're wondering what that is, that's all for it. Anyways, once the Unity Hub is open, you simply have to make an account and do that quickly. Next, you can go to Install tab and then Install Editor, and then I would recommend installing one of these Unity 6 versions. Currently, I am using in my opinion, the best LTS version, Unity 6.0, and I'd recommend installing it if you want not 10 years into the future. Anyways, next you can move to Projects, New Project. Here you can take the editor version, and also just quickly I'm going to guide you through install editor, click here, and then after you've installed it, I recommend selecting documentation and WebGL. This means that you'll be able to basically put it for anything. Anyways, next you click New Project, and then select your editor version. In my case, this, which is the LTS version. Next, click on Universal 3D. You might have to download it something, but in my case, I don't, because I've already downloaded everything. And what I'm going to name this is Flappy Bird. That's it. And then you simply create project and wait for everything to work. This might take a little while. So once you have this loaded up, we can start doing some folder structure. And so the first step is, before I explain this stuff, just quickly go here, right click, create folder, call it rendering. Anyways, now you can drag these two folders in, and then you can create another folder called input and drag this in. Now then, quickly what I'm going to explain is the layout. So this is the project panel. This is basically stuff that are in your project. You don't necessarily need to be using them, but they're in the project. This is the scene. The scene consists of everything in the current, let's say, level, because let's say you're currently on a level. Because, imagine your main menu, as a scene, and your game as a scene. Every bit of those are like scenes. So, anyways, the first step to what you're going to want to do is, quickly, I need to explain the inspector. The inspector lets you inspect game objects, and game objects are anything. As you can see, your camera's a game object. You can see right here. Your global ID. It's a game object. Everything is a game object in Unity, and they have a transform, they have a position, they have a rotation, and they have a scale. Anyways, this is the game view, which shows you everything in how stuff will look like. This is a scene view where you can mess around with your game objects, like, for example, moving my camera around. I'm just going to come outside to recenter, or panning, for example, with this tool. And then I can obviously rotate. Now I'm going to undo that. Anyways, and I can also scale because, well, why not? And this thing can scale from this. I'll explain in a minute. I believe this is all visuals. Anyways, this is your package manager, where you can download packages. We're not going to be doing that today, but I will explain it in a future tutorial if you want me to, or I will explain it in the comments. Anyways, as I was saying, you can also switch for these via the QWERTY keys. So like this, let's say now I want to the move tool, and then I can select this. Yeah, you get the point. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Flappy Bird, and then I'm going to open it. And then I'm going to drag all of these into my project. Now then, I'm going to just show what's in. Anyways, so as you can see in our audio, there's just some audio. In our fonts, there's just a Flappy Bird font, and then here there is text, height, ground, yellow bird, red bird, and blue bird, and then back there is the background. As you can see, there's a day and night. Anyways, now what we're going to have to do first is implement the bird. So quickly just create the empty game object, and we're going to call this a bird. And basically how Unity works is that you add components, including the script, which you can write yourself, to change that. So for example, right here, just click add component and then search up sprite render. This will render our bird, aka showing it in the game. I can show just like this. If I go into my bird and then click yellow or red, I guess, because why not? And then do mid flap 0. Anyway, so you know what the work we have to do is just quickly go through all of them and then set the pixels per unit to approximately 16, because in my opinion, that's what always really looks nice. So you can go through these, and we're going to just be doing this as we go along. So 16, 16, and 16. And then next what we're going to have to do is do some more settings. So we're going to set the filter mode to 0.no filter and keep compression to none. This is because we're using pixel art, so it makes it more, I don't know, pixel arty and crisp. So we can just do that again, apply, and do that for the blue birds. Anyways, next what I'm going to want to do is do this, and simply apply. And now and then you can see the bird's a little bit bigger. And what I'm going to do quickly is set the size of my camera to 10. That way it's a bit more zoomed out. I'm going to try it. 7 looks good in my opinion, so I'm going to do that. And now, as you can see, there's no other layer, which is how far back or front it is. Anyways, in case you want to change the background color, we are going to change it later, but you can just go here. Anyways, next what you're going to have to do is change the aspect ratio. And what we're going to do is a 9:16, because this is more Flappy Bird. But after thinking a while ago, I thought that was a bit weird. So what I am actually going to do is I'm going to use a 12:16 aspect ratio, which in my opinion looks just a little bit better. And if you want, you can also use 16:9, which by the way is 1920 by 1080 and Anyways, I was just saying if you just wanted to be more like the original Flappy Bird. Anyways, you can see our bird is here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add some other components, such as a collider. This lets it collide with other game objects with a collider. So search up collider, and then make sure to type double L. and then you can see a circle collider 2D. So now I want it to be quite fair, so I'm just going to reduce this to, let's say, 0.7. And as you can see, this looks pretty much exactly what it is, the size, sorry. Anyways, now we're going to add a rigid body 2D. And this rigid body 2D makes it so the board has gravity and, well, velocity. So you can set the gravity scale, which in my opinion is going to be, I like 4.5. Anyways, and now set, you can set interpolate to interpolate and collision detection to continuous if you want really accurate collision detection. But in my opinion, I don't really need that. So I'm not going to do that. Anyways, I think in tutorials you should mention what you can do. So that's in case you're wondering why. Anyways, the angular damping, I believe, sort of mass speaks for itself. And now we can play the game to see, well, just a boring game because, well, we can't control it. We can't do anything. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go down here in our assets, create a folder, call it scripts, and then in there we can go right click, create, and then mono behavior script. This is going to be our bird script. Now then, it will have to compile, which might take a little while, but who really cares? Don't about it. Anyways, now that it's done compiling, you can drag this on and it will automatically create a bird script component. Next, click the three dot menu and then click edit script. Next thing that you're going to have to do, because it won't open in VS Code, is you're going to have to go into your browser again and search up VS Code download. And then you can download it from here and then click your operating system. Next, after that, once you've done the installation, you can simply go in VS Code and then go to extensions, search up C#. Whoops, sorry. C#, and you have to go to the extensions tab. And then you will see the C# dev kit and C#. Simply install this. You can install it right here. Currently, I haven't already installed it, so it says uninstalled, but anyways. Next what we're going to start is Unity, and then you're going to want just click it's modified and Unity. That is it. Next what you're going to want to do is, as I said, open that up, and it should open in VS Code by default. And now then, this is our script. It's C#, which isn't the most complex thing ever, so don't be worried or anything. So anyways, what the first step that you're going to have to do here is go here at the top and then create a serialized field, capital N. By the way, the autocorrect might not come in immediately, but it will. And then type serialized field, and then type private, and then float, and then flat or flat. And now I'm going to set this to around 20 by default. And I'm going to explain what this means. So serialized field means that this will show up in the inspector. Private is specifying the type of the variable. Public variables can be accessed from other scripts, while private cannot. I said it's private because there's no real need to access it from another script. And float defines its type. There are ints, which are only integers, aka they can never be like decimal numbers. There are floats, which can be decimal numbers or could not be. It doesn't really matter. Anyways, there are strings, which are a sequence of characters. For example, serialized field, private, and then this is just for demonstration purposes, by the way, string. So string, and then we're going to say test is equal to, and then just in double quotes. I misspelled that, so test and semicolon to end of everything, because that's what you do in C#. Anyways, this is the type. This is the name of our variable, and then this is what's default value is. What it will show up by default in the inspector. So the first step, so the next step is to simply get our rigid body 2D. Since we can get the rigid body 2D, so serialize field again, and then private rigid body 2D, and then call this RB, or my rigid body. Really, it's anything that you want. I personally like RB because it's short and it's explanatory. But anyways, let's get on with it. And so what we're going to need to do now is we're going to have access to rigid body, which we can just drag into the field. I'll show you how. We can do RB dot linear velocity y, and then we can set this to kilometers. And this will make the bird constantly go up. But that isn't really what we want. So we're going to do an if statement. In case you have never done programming, an if statement is kind of like a gate. And if, let's say, you're walking and you'll see a gate, and let's say only for horse riders. That's sort of an if statement. Sorry if my explanations is really bad. Anyways, input dot get key down. So dot get key down. This is getting if the key is down, obviously. Then we're gonna do key code, and then a dot, and then space. And if so, then we simply do this code. We can copy it by Command C and paste it with Command or Control V, depending on if you're on Windows or Mac. And now, if we go in, then we should already have our bird movement done. I will show you. So click on the bird, and then you'll see it wants a rigid body. So drag it in, and it was like bird, rigid body. And now if you want, you can change the style. Like, let's say you want it to be extra large, or 20. Anyways, one thing to note is that none of these values are saved if you're in play mode. None. You can, however, a neat little trick, just quickly, is you can copy the component, and then after you can paste component values, which is just a neat trick. And also, if you want to see your private variables, which see your non-serialized field private variables, then you can just do this, which is by setting the inspector to default. I wouldn't recommend doing this that much. It's quite scary, and it isn't really necessary. Now what we're going to do is we're going to animate the bird. Make it so that it always has that nice flapping animation. So go to Window, Animation, and then Animation. You can also do Command or Control, can do on Windows Control 6 or on Mac Command 6. Anyways, we're going to click on bird, and it says create an animation and an animation clip. So we're going to create, and then we are going to just use the script because why not? We're going to make an animation for bird. And then we're going to call this flap, because, well, we're always going to be doing this, but this is flap. Anyways, next what we can do is we can drag the project folder up there, because if in case you didn't know, you can do this with anything. And then in the assets, create folder, and I'm going to call this animation. And then you'll see in your scripts there are two stuff which you can just drag into the animation, and in there, just yeah. And now what it's looking for is some sort of change. Like you can record stuff. I would recommend doing that because that will work some of the time. Or you can just drag in sprites. And if you go and you can zoom in with scroll wheel, then you can preview it. And as you can see, it's way too fast. So you can change this value. As you can see, this is better. I'm thinking around 10-ish. Yeah, this looks good. So now you can drag your project folder back down, and this is all we're going to really be doing in the animation folder. So if you want, you can simply right click and then close tab. And then once you play, you will see that this works. If I just zoom out, whoops, anyways, you saw. Now what we're gonna do is go to Window, Animation again, because there was one thing that we missed out, and that was that it would be very nice if the bird sort of went, wait, quickly, I'm just going to do this, went like, instead of this, then it was down, up, middle, up, middle. So we can redo, we can drag this picture folder back up, and then we can go up to the middle, flap, and this should still work perfectly. Anyways, now you can click the play button again to actually properly try it. As you can see, it looks very nice. And this is all the animation that we're going to be doing for today. Anyways, in our bird, we can, I guess, be done with it. You can call that done. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to create our pipes. So in your assets folder, create, folder, call it prefabs. What we're going to make are prefabricated game objects, which are game objects that can be instantiated and created at runtime. So, but before we do that, I say we just quickly set up our background. So in order to do that, you can just drag this in, and as I said, quickly set these to 16, point of filter, and none. As you can see, it's pixelated. If you don't want to do that, if you don't like that, then you can just set conversion to normal quality and the filter mode to well, by minute. Or yeah. And anyways, rename this to sorry, you can just double click, and then rename this to background. Excuse my spelling. Now in the transform, you can set its scale to something like what, 0.5 by 0.5. And as you can see, this looks a lot nicer. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna quickly have to duplicate. So right now I'm going to teach you about parent and child game objects. So instead, name this background main. And then we are just going to have many of these in here. And basically, a parent, a child game object has its position relative. Everything is relative to the parent. So as you can see, its position is relative to our background's position is relative to our background main position. Technically, if you don't want to, then you don't need to do this, but I just thought it would be a teachable moment, if you know what I mean. Also, if you want to duplicate, then Command or Control D will do the trick. If you're on Windows, Control D, and if you're on Mac, Command D. Anyways, as you can see, I am just duplicating, and now this looks very good. Now we have 3 backgrounds, and as I said, if you just want to organize them like I do, just make a new background and drag it. And as you can see, they're all the same. I recommend just moving this to the back, and as you can see, the bird is not showing. You remember that order and layer that we were talking about? Well, now we're going to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the order and layer, aka the raw mode, since Unity is still fundamentally a 3D engine, to -100, which means that it gets rendered first, and then the bird gets rendered on top of it. You get what I mean? And now the bird should show. And next, as I said, we're going to instantiate the pipes. So we're going to create an empty pipe game object, because this is going to have a pipe bottom and a pipe top. So, I personally like the red pipes, so I'm just going to drag them in. I'm going to name this pipe, and then bottom. And then, as I said, you need to select these, and then set the pixels per unit to 16. Point no filter and none. And as you can see, they're pretty nice size. Now what we're going to do is we're going to drag this to below. So, and then as you can see, well, it is down here. And if you look in the game view, it looks pretty nice. So next, anyways, now you can duplicate that, call it pipe top, and then drag it up, and then you can flip. And in order to flip it, what we're gonna do is we're gonna set its Y scale to -1. Because we are basically, because we're flipping it on the Y axis. So just, and then I'd recommend setting this to like an even number, like let's say -13, and then this to something like, I don't know, +30. And as you can see, that is our pipe setup, since we have our top and bottom done. Something that we need to add though before we stop is on both of ours is we're gonna have to add a box collider to these. That's interesting, a bit better than a box collider or circle collider. Just really won't work. And now on our pipe, we are going to quickly make a script, and then we're gonna add it to it. We are going to call this command behavior script pipe move script. Now you have to wait for it to load again. You'll have to do this every time you make a script, unfortunately. Anyways, one thing I gotta mention is the console, which basically shows any errors and any stuff you wanted to show, which makes that in script. So in case you get an error, then it's probably going to be in the console. And it will say, for example, if you have a semicolon expected, then you go to the line on that script and then put in a semicolon again. Anyways, we can drag this here and then do the same. Right on menu, edit script, method, and now in here we are going to do a little bit of, so first of all, a serialized field, and then private, again, a private float, and then this is going to be move speed, which is equal to, let's say, well, really whatever you want. I'm just gonna set 5, and then type F at the end, just to save some errors. Anyways, it stops some errors, sorry. In update, which gets called every frame. Sorry, I didn't mention this. Update gets called every frame, and start gets called on the very first frame. So every frame, we are checking if the key space is down, and then we are adding this velocity. I'm sorry that this is a bit late, but anyways. So basically, for our pipe, we simply want to set its transform to position equals to transform to position plus our move speed, at least its x position. So I'll explain what I mean by that. Transform dot position, and then plus equals this is basically the equivalent of equals and then transform dot position plus. So you can do this with anything. So for example, this would be the same as transform dot position is equal to transform dot position plus vector free dot left, which by the way is a shorthand of saying -1 0 0, which is basically what we want, and then to multiply by move speed and multiply by time by time. You can instead do plus equals. It's the exact same thing. Anyways, I think this is basically all that we need. And in case you're wondering what we're doing, here is, if you don't add this line in stuff that are not physics related, then it won't work, because it will tie the speed or the way that you're moving to the frame rate, which we do not really want. So, as you can see, we have this, and If we go back and wait for it to compile, and then we can run it, and the pipes should be moving. Oh, whoops, wrong direction. Also, something quickly to do is that we don't want our bird moving, so enter the bird, rigid body duty, constraints, freeze rotation, Z. Anyways, we can go on to our pipe script and then go back to the script, and it was my bad because I forgot you're meant to do vector free dot right, not vector free dot left, and this now should work because as you saw, the pipes were moving in the wrong direction, which I say is completely my fault. As you can see, it's pretty slow. If you want to change, then that's fine. Personally, I'm going to change it to 7. And now what we're going to do is we want these pipes to spawn here because it's not going to be a bird that's moving towards the pipes. It's actually the pipes that's moving towards the bird. Actually, I just realized I was right. It was meant to be vector free dot left. Why am I such an idiot? Because they're meant to move from the left side. Anyways, sorry for that. Anyways, after we go back in, I'll explain what pre. Anyways, now you can drag your pipe right. Sorry. Now that this is done, you can take your pipe and drag it into the prefab sphere. This will create a prefabricated game object, which is game object that you can spawn. For example, do this and you'll spawn another pipe. Now you can delete this pipe from the inspector because you're going to spawn later. And now, what you're going to want to do is create a empty game object, call it pipe, and then spawn. And this game object will spawn the pipes, as it says. So you're going to want to put it a little bit off the screen. In my case, the edge of the screen is right here, so I'm going to put it right here. And then we are going to go back into our scripts and create a new monobehavior script, which is going to be pipe spawner. Anyways, we have to wait for it to recompile again. Compile again, sorry. And now we can again just drag it on. And then we can click the free dot menu and edit script, and I'm just going to set this to 15 quickly because I like estimating. Anyways, edit script. And you can see our pipe spawner script is open. So in here, what we're going to want to do is we're going to get a directory, a serialized field, and then we're going to type private, since we don't need any other script to get this, and then game object, and I'm going to call this pipe prefab. And then obviously end off with a semicolon, and then again, as my AI system is telling me, serialized field, and then private float spawn rate is spawn, so rate is equal to 2f, and this is going to be basically the time that every type spawns. It spawns every 2 seconds. So, and then we're going to have a private variable, so we don't want it to be accessed in the inspector, just a plain old private. Okay? A private float, and then we're going to call this spawn time. Or spawn time, that one still works. Basically, this is going to be set to 0, and then once it's at 2, we're simply going to, once it's at 2, we're going to spawn a pipe. So, let's quickly just create a method, which, by the way, a void, and then we're gonna call this spawn pipe. And then basically in here, what we're gonna do is that we can call this, and any code that's in here will happen when we call it. For example, if we want this to happen every single second, then we can type spawn pipe just right here, and then do these brackets and semicolon, and it will call absolutely nothing because there's nothing in there. Whoops. Anyways, in here we're going to simply set we're going to do instantiate, which was spawn something, and then instantiate this one, and then we can flip for different types of it. So what we're going to want to do is so first of all, we are going to instantiate the pipe prefab at the current transformed position, and then this is the rotation, which we want just to be basically the same as what it is. So, and instead of transformed position, well, we want it to be kind of random. So we are going to have another serialized field variable, serialized field, private float, spawn interval. I guess not spawn interval. I'll call it pipe interval. Actually no, pipe distance. This is going to be basically the distance from the center where the pipe will be. And what we're going to do, instead of setting it to transformed position, is a new and then a vector frame. I know that this is a 2D game, but it's technically a 3D world, so we'll have to use a new vector frame. And then in here, we are going to our first variable is just going to be the x position. So we're going to do transform.position.x. By the way, when I'm doing this, I'm accessing the game of when I'm saying transform.position.x, it means that the game object that's on transform.position.x. Sorry, I haven't mentioned that, and that probably wasn't a very good explanation. Anyways, the transform.position.y will be let's see. So, sorry, I should have typed distance properly. And now then, so first of all, we're going to spawn the bottom pipe. So, what we're going to have to do, I believe, is you're going to, let me just think. Oh yeah. Basically, we're going to simply spawn it within a current bounds, which means that this should probably be around 5-ish. And that's where the actual game object will be, the main pipe game object. So, in here, we are going to do a random dot range. And then we can do from negative pipe distance to positive pipe distance. This will generate a random number from, as I said, -5 to +5. And you technically don't need to put in a z. Anyways, that I believe is pretty much it. So we can do this, and it should hopefully work. Wait, I forgot. This is still a void, so we need to call it every few seconds. I'm very, very sorry. So in here, if the spawn timer is less than the spawn rate, this means that if, yeah, it's pretty much self-explanatory, then the spawn timer goes up by the amount of time changed. And else, then we have to do these brackets, by the way, the curly brackets. These are like, but everything in here will be like for example, stuff outside of these curly brackets won't happen if you put these outside of the curly brackets, for example, this won't work. Actually, if you put them, let's say here, then it would just be called every single frame. The curly brackets mark the start and end of it. So now I can just quickly do this because this is how I like organizing it. And in the else statement, we need a spawn pipe, and spawn timer is equal to 0. This will spawn in every however long you specify the spawn rate. And if we go in here, and then it will work. As long as we just get all the references and whatnot. So basically now what we're going to do is we're going to take our pipe and drag it in. And now every 2 seconds, I believe it should spawn. I'm waiting, and it spawned it. It spawned it. It spawned it. And it spawned it. And just for adjustment's sake, I'm just going to borrow the bird to check the max height, and that seems around 6.5. So we can go into pipe spawner, set the pipe distance to 6.5-ish, or a bit less, I'd say 6-ish or 5.5. I mean, we said 6. Anyways, that's just better. And now we have our pipe spawning, our bird, and our background. Do you know the last step? It's game over, and starting it, obviously. So first of all, we're gonna implement the starting, and that is going to be relatively simple. What we're going to do is we are going to go into our sprites, and then you should have in text a message, which is basically the get ready message from Flappy Bird itself, and I do not know why this isn't properly working. Don't ask. Anyways, I'm just going to set this to none and 16, and the normal settings. Point no filter, and it should hopefully work. Okay, it's just saying Flappy Bird. Oh, sorry. I believe it has each of these individually. Basically it's slicing it, to be precise. It's just slicing it into all of these little bits. In my case, I don't really want this, so I'm just going to open the sprite editor and then slice, and then put it by cell size, and then I'm going to set the cell size to something completely massive, like 1000. And it should just register them all as one sprite. So you can save this, and now the get ready message will be proper. And basically now what we're going to do is we're going to deactivate our bird and our pipe spawner. By the way, you can set this deactivation here, and now they won't really work. As you can see, nothing's happening. What we want is when the player actually clicks, then it will start. So we're gonna start. So we're gonna set this as start. Rename to start game. Oh yeah, and quickly, we can go to pipe spawner, and this is just gonna make stuff better. You can in start. You can also call spawn just to make it so that the pipe spawn immediately. So spawn pipe, just save that. Sorry. Anyways, now that this is done, we can actually implement the start game. So just wait for this to reload. Sorry about those quick changes. I'm just quite an idiot. Anyways, on the start game, we can just add a component, which will be we can create a script, and then call this game start. And then in it, we're gonna have basically we're gonna check if the if the key mouse 0 is down, and if it is, then we can simply activate those game objects. So we can drag this on here, edit scripts like normal, and then in our VS Code, we can simply get to game object public, and then game object bird, and then public game object spawner, and then in here, if input.get key down, input.get key down, and then it's going to be key code dot, I believe, mouse 0. Yeah, mouse 0, and then in that situation we can set we can just set the bird to a bird. Sorry, no, it's wrong. A bird dot set active true pipe spawner dot set active true, which is basically just activating them, and set this game object to inactive. And now if we just drag in those fields, then it should. By the way, something to note, you can just drag in game objects and it will automatically create them with the sprite renderer. So we simply click bird, and then we can do this. And now, as you can see, we can tap and the game starts. And in fact, I'm going to set my start game just a little bit smaller, like 0.5-ish, 5.9, just so it looks a bit clearer and you can actually see stuff. So I'm just feel free to resize it to what you like. In my case, 0.8 looks absolutely perfect, so that is what I'm going to do. And I'm also going to center it. In case you want to do this fast, but you can do reset property and then do position, for example, or rotation. And now that we have the starting game, we're going to make it so that you can end the game. So the way that we're going to do this is we are going to create a new UI. So user interface, by the way, UI, and then quickly set start game to not active, and then UI, and then we can do TextMesh Pro, or if you want to do it fast, then I believe we can go into Sprite and then open up, and then let's text and game over, which we can just drag in, and then again you have to set everything to what we liked, 16, none. Anyways, whoops, it looks like it's in 2 messages, so we're going to again have to just do slice and then type where to buy still size, and then just set this to a very massive number. So just do 1000 or however which you want, slice, and then click this, save, and now you can see that our game over shows. So we're going to call this game over and then text. And now then we're going to have to do UI, unfortunately. That's what you have to do. So, and then we're going to go to our UI and then button TextMesh Pro, and then import the TMT Essentials, which basically imports TextMesh Pro, which is basically just a better version of text. It's a tad more complicated, but I believe whoever you are, you can do it on your starting. So in case you want to see how it will look, you can just go to Game View, and then in my opinion, this looks pretty okay-ish. And then we're gonna quickly set the size to double what it is, so we can multiply by 2 because you can do calculations in the inspector. Sorry, forgot to say. And then what we can do is we can set the color first of all, set the transition to none, and then set the color to, wait, you can use the color picker, sorry. Use the color picker to select this, just, if you get that, then click 9, and you can do this, or really whatever you want. Personally, I'm liking black, or I guess white. And then game over, and then under this, you'll see a text which we can change the value of. And this is going to be play a game. Space a game. And as you can see, we are going to have to try and as you can see, sorry, at the bottom, we can, I believe, exercise, sorry, where is it? Oh, sorry, in the button, go down, on click. It will basically call a function if the thing is clicked. So, now then we can create a new empty, and then we're going to call this game manager. So, oops, sure, and then go to scripts, create a game manager script. Sure. In here, you can drag this, and then you can edit a script, and then we're going to create some public functions, which means that they can be accessed from other scripts, which in this case we want. So you can basically delete all of this, and then do a public, and then just type void, and then we are going to call this void reset game, reset, and then game, and then in our reset game function, all we're going to do is we're going to access the using, which basically lets you have some extra stuff, Unity engine.scene management, and then do scene manager dot load scene, and then we're going to do scene manager dot get active scene dot build the next or dot name. This will basically just restart the game because it's accessing the certain scene and it's just restarting it. It's a bit complex, so I wouldn't like to explain it in this episode, in this right now. Anyways, now that all of this is saved, we can go back in and wait for it to reload. So and basically it'll just reload this entire thing. So in our button note, we are going to have to add an on-click event. So next we're adding the game manager, and this is what's going to happen. Game manager, and then reset game. So game manager.reset game will happen when this button is clicked. So we can quickly just start the game, and then if you click, then you'll see it keeps resetting the game. Now then, this is not exactly what we want, so temporarily we can, actually, for now, we can just deactivate this and the game error text, and activate our start game. And now what we're going to do is we're going to check if the bird is colliding with our enemy or the pipe. And if it is, then we will call that game over. So, in case you're wondering, yes, I will have score, just not right now, after the game over. Anyways, quickly, what we can do is, in our bird, we can go into the bird script, and then we can have a value, I guess, is alive. So, This one you don't need to see private, and then we can do bool, and then is alive, which by the way is just true or false value, and then we're going to set it to by default true, and then down here we're going to have a method on co, and then just on collision enter to D. Okay, so then type on collision. Okay, you have to type manually. Sometimes autocorrect works, but anyways, on collision, you can just do void and then on collision enter to D, and then collision to D collision, and then if collision dot game object and then dot compare tag with pipe, and then if that is, then we simply set is alive to false, and then yeah, that's currently it. And here we can just stop ourselves from flapping if is alive. So if is alive, then this happens. Then, but sorry, here we can do this, and if and else, then nothing will happen. So now we can actually test this by just going into a pipe, but it won't work because I tagged a specifier and we haven't set that specifier. Let me explain how you do set that specifier. So anyways, once it's loaded, go into the prefabs folder, open the pipe, and we're going to change it a little bit. So in tag, add tag, and then we are going to change the tag, and then we're going to name it to pipe, what we said earlier. And then we're going to set this pipe, set both of these to pipe, and our bird shouldn't be able to move, just click save, if the bird is dead. AKA it's gone into pipes. This is just a start. We will obviously do more, but anyways, later, by the way, we are going to set a game over if the bird hits the ground. So, anyway, yeah, you can see the bird can't move if they hit into a pipe. So that's a start, but now what we're going to do is we are going to go to our game manager and then edit the script. And then we are going to call the, we're going to set, serialized field, private game object, game over text, text, and then private game object restart button, and then basically what we're going to do is we're going to set these to active on a void call. So public void game over, and on that, then we're going to do this. And now we're going to get a reference to this game manager script in our bird script. So serialized field, just as we're accessing, by the way, components. Private, and then game manager, and then game manager. And here, game manager dot game over is what we will do. So you have to go back. You have to go to, by the way, each script and save them. And now, hopefully, it should work but we need to drag in the game over text and the button. So we're drag in the button and the game over text. And now, if we start the game, you can say we should have a game over. So let's just continue to type on purpose, and I don't get why that is working. Oh, because we haven't set the reference, we haven't referenced game manager. So we can just drag that image. It will automatically access the image script. Excuse me for that mistake. Anyways, you saw you could have seen error object reference not set to an object, and that was the reason. And then we can simply play again, and play again, and as you can see, our game over is completely done. So the last thing today that we're going to be adding is scoring. So in order to do that, we are going to have to create a new text. So UI, text Pro GUI, text Mesh Pro, and then we're going to call this score text. And then we can go to our scene view, and as you can see, this is the canvas isn't showing. Don't ask why. Oh, sorry. Yeah, this is the canvas, this box, and that is the game. Anyways, we can set this to score colon and then 0, and then in here we can set the font size and stuff. But the first thing that we're gonna want to do is we're gonna have to set the font to the Flappy Bird font. Sorry, you have to right click this and then create and then Text Mesh Pro font asset and then I believe SVN. Yeah, and now you can drag it. As you can see, it's more pixelated and more Flappy Bird, if you know what I mean. In my opinion, 48 looks pretty nice, and we're gonna obviously have to set this to, you can either set this to inactive or active meanwhile the game is not on. I personally like to have it here. And by the way, this is not going to be the only thing that we're going to add after this. After this, we're going to also do highest score, which is rather complicated, but it will also save even if you get off the game and come back on it. So anyways, as I was saying, we can do this, and simply what we're going to do is we're going to have a new trigger collider in our, where is it? Oh yeah, prefabs, and then pipe, and then open, and then we're going to have a new game object. And just go to scene, new empty, and then we're gonna call this, oops, it's not create empty, and then we're gonna call this pipe middle. This is basically what will detect if the player goes for a, therefore increasing their score. And we're gonna add a component which is a box collider, and now we're gonna set it to trigger, which basically means that the player doesn't nothing collides into it, but it lets it know if something is touching this. So now then we can set the size to 10, the X size to 1, and the Y size to 5. And now we can go to our scripts and create a new model behavior script. Call it pipe middle script. What we're gonna actually do in this is quite complicated. It's gonna be automatically accessing the bird at runtime. Wait, sorry, I think that was wrong. I think it was the game manager. I don't know. Yeah, no, wait, actually, no. Sorry, yeah, we have to access the game manager at runtime automatically. So now we drag the pipe middle script on here, and then do edit script. And then in here, we're going to simply have another on collision enter 2D. If you want, you can just copy it, or I guess it's on trigger enter 2D. So I guess you don't really need to do and then type void on trigger enter 2D, collider 2D, other, and then in here, if other dot compare tag, and then is equal to bird. Then we are going to do absolutely nothing, but we will, because we're going to add a script onto the game, a function onto the game manager to basically add score. So anyways, if it is bird, then we can quickly go to the game manager and make this function public void, and then it's going to be public void, and then sorry, add score. So add, and then, add, and then score. And here you put the curly brackets, and in here we are going to, get a text mesh for you GUI, serialized field, private, and then text mesh for you GUI, text mesh pro you GUI, and it should automatically import TM pro, and then score text, and then score text, and then next what we'll do is score text dot text is equal to, and then we're going to do a string score colon space, and then plus, and then next we're going to have a value, a variable called score, so serialized field private int score, and then in here we can add score, so score plus plus, which basically just adds 1, score is equal to score plus, and then score, and then it might give you an error, but just anyways, just do score.toString just to be safe. And now if we go into our Python middle script, we have to do game manager. So in order to access it at runtime, we're going to have to get a private game manager, and in here we're going to do game manager is equal to find object. I think. Wait, let me just see what types are there. So find object of type game manager, and as you can see, it gives an obsolete. Well, that's completely fine. Or you can do, in my opinion, what's better is just to find game object with tag game manager.get component game manager. Okay. Okay, wait, let me just see. Sorry, maybe I can change this. Sorry, oh, here, this is better. And now we have to add 2 tags when we go back in, and then we also have to do game manager dot add score, and this should completely work. We just need to go in every script and completely save, and save. And then we need to remember to do a lot of stuff. And then we can save this, sorry. And then game manager, it's looking for a score text, which we can drag this in. And then we can quickly on our bird set its tag to bird, which I believe we did with the pipe add tag anyways. And then we're going to do bird, BIRD, make sure it's exactly like that, and go here. And then set tag to bird, and then in game manager, we can also add tag, and then type exactly game manager, and then say, and then it should save it, and then game manager. And hopefully, if I'm right, it should work. We did everything right. So as you can see, it worked. So the last thing that we're going to implement, and this is very complex, by the way, it's high score. So we're going to have to use player press, which are variables that get set even if you turn off the game. So the way that way that we're going to do this is by simply just duplicating this, and then we're going to call this high score, and then text. And then we are going to have this be the same, except high score. And then, yeah, so, in our game manager, we can go edit script. And go high, and then score text. And then on game over, if score, let me just see. So we're gonna have to quickly make a integer, which is going to be high score with player press. Play. So simply type player press dot set int high score to by default just a 0. High score to 0, and then if the score, yeah, basically this is it. If score is greater than player press dot get int high score, then player press dot set int high score to score. Yeah, and I also think that, yeah, let me just think. I believe this should work. Hopefully. Anyways, just click so many times and eventually it will just compile, by the way. Click a lot. I've forgotten to set the high score text to our high score text. And I guess I will just put this right in, start the game, and it should work. Oh wait, did I? Okay, one thing that I forgot to set was, first of all, we need to what was it? Oh yeah. Let me just see. Oh yeah. One thing that we need to do quickly is, also in here, high score text is equal to high score plus player press dot get int high score dot do string. Sorry if I went over that a bit fast for my AI. I recommend downloading its timeline. Just sorry, that's not completely necessary, so I didn't really mention it. Anyways, hopefully it will work. If it works, then I believe you. We might be done. As you can see, the high score got set to 1, and okay, I think at start we should also do all this. So quickly we can do voids. We can just type start and then start. Just or better way, just type void start, and then in void start we can copy this, paste it, and it should hopefully work now. It isn't working. Oh, you not get why? Oh, it's setting it to the current score, which gets set to 0 every time. So we actually just need to display the high score, which was my mistake. Anyways, after this, I will have to say bye if I am finished. So, again, just madly click. Yeah, now if we get a higher score, then it should work. Okay, I got 3, I got 4. Sorry, I got 3, and now you can see the high score is saved. So the last thing to do is go to window and then search, new window, and then build and run, and then in case you want to just make it so you can quit, so what I recommend doing is just making it so that it quits out the game, but that is that when you do game over, is that when the game over is enabled. Then there's also a button that tells you that to quit game. So what I'm going to, so I'm sorry, I just gotta quickly do this. So Command D, we can name this button 1, it doesn't really matter. We can show this, and then it can be named, right. Yeah. So we can just quickly set the text message pro to instead quit game, sorry. And then up here, and then on click, we can go into Game Manager, edit the script, and then we can have a one called quit game. So a public void quit game, and then again this, and then a bit of this, and then in here, scene, I believe it's scene management dot quit. Debugger.log, quit me, or you can do application.quit, done, tab, yeah, all of this. So now, I'm sorry for doing that over that really fast, it's just something that's quite simple, and you should hopefully know how to do it. And obviously, I forgot something, which is that we need to deactivate, activate this when, so basically, we need to reference it, serialize field, and then private game object, and then it's going to be called quit game, or really anything. I'm just going to say quit game button, and then in here, quit game button dot select, and it should work hopefully. Right now, I'm maybe going to show you a demonstration of how it looks in the when it's built. So, then I serialize field it, and this has a, oh wait, it has an error, which there's no scene management output, there's only application output. I'll just quickly do this. Anyways, quit game button is this, which we can sort of quickly set to inactive, and then if we just quickly use the game, quit game, and as you can see, it doesn't do anything because we're not in an application. So, but it would do something if you are in an application. application if you build it into an application, which is actually what we are going to do right now. So we're going to need to go window and then search new window and then build and run, and then we can see it should okay, okay, the command B it says. So save as, and then you can save it as, let's say, I'm gonna call mine just flappy bird, nothing else, and then just save, and then click save. I was just creating some backups, so hopefully nothing bad will happen. Phew, that took took a long time. Now you can see we can play, and you can play the game, and if you want to adjust it just for the application, then you can completely do that by the text, by just changing it. And I guess that is it. So bye guys.